Radio Crusader.
It's time to kick it some chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
Hello everybody, it's Freddie Mac, your ham radio crusader, and I'm back with a follow-up video on the TYT UV8000D. You might remember this little handheld, beautiful as it is. Remember, this is the one that's 70 centimeter, 2 meter, and it does crossband repeat. It acts as a crossband repeater, and in my previous video, it didn't do a bad job. But I had my worries. I had my wonders. In the ham radio world that I live in, we appreciate a radio with spectral purity. Something that's not throwing off a bunch of spurious emissions, maybe throwing some bad harmonics on other bands. And I got an offer from Jim, WT1W, over at Coffee and Ham Radios, and he said, hey, ship it to me. I'll run it on the spectrum analyzer, and we'll check the sine wave and see how good it is. And I'm like, that is a very, very gracious offer. So I shipped it to him. He tested it, ran me a couple little videos, and shipped it back to me. And I tell you what, Jim's great, knows what he's doing. And I think you might find these results a little surprising. I know I was. So let's kick it over to Jim and see what he found out. We'll be right back.
Hey, Freddie. I've got this thing hooked up to the spectrum analyzer, and let's take a look at it. For reference, I'm using a Siglent SVA1015X combination spectrum analyzer and VNA. I've got all the setup done already, and I want to remind everybody of a couple things. We have a 30 dBm attenuator, which is listed right down here. That's our reference offset to account for the 30 dB. So the values that we see over here on the screen are going to be exactly what the radio is putting out according to the spectrum analyzer. Our reference level is 30 dBm, which is 1 watt, I think, or close. And I'm actually going to change that. We're going to move that up to 40 dBm for our reference level, because this is supposed to be a 10 watt radio. Actually, let's set it on 41, give us a little headroom. All right. So when I key up, what we're looking for, we're scanning between 140 megahertz and 800 megahertz, and we want to see if there's any harmonics that pop up. They need to be below this red line that you see right here, okay? So this is on VHF, and let me double check. We are on high power, and we're going to key up. And there's our primary signal, and it's showing up at 39.85 dBm, which is darn near 10 watts. And there is nothing showing up. So that is outstanding. And you can see our noise floor is right below our 16 dB line. So this is great. This is awesome. Just to double check, let's put it on low power and make sure that it looks the same. Because we have seen recently some radios that were sketchy on low power, but not sketchy on high power, or vice versa. So we're going to set that guy to low power and key up again. And you can see we dropped down to 36 dBm, and there is nothing there to look at. Absolutely nothing to look at. That's awesome. And if I change the scale over to show us the units in watts, so at low power we have 4.25 watts of output, and if we go back to high power, we have 9.53 watts of output. This radio is rated at 10 watts, so that's awesome. This is truly a 10 watt handheld. All right, let me jump over to UHF real quick, and let's key up. And there are no visible harmonics there. We can go all the way out to 1.5 gigahertz. So let's do that real quick here. And we'll set our stop frequency to 1.5 gigahertz. And we'll key up again. And there's nothing there. And this is high power UHF, 3.68 watts. I believe it's high power, and we'll check it. That was low. And so we'll change it to high power UHF. And what do we see? 9.15 watts at UHF. So that's great. The power values on this radio match pretty closely to what the rated specs are. And This is interesting. This is one of the first radios I've seen where the UHF power is almost identical to the VHF power. So awesome. I'm thinking this is a really good radio. Stand by one more time. We're going to hook it up to the oscilloscope and see what the sine wave for the output signal looks like. All right, let's do our other quick test. So what we've got here is this is the oscilloscope. This is the Regal 5074. In the upper right corner of the screen, above my head, you'll see a frequency counter. And then the blue line is going to be our actual RF output signal. And we want a nice clean sine wave. So let's take a quick look and see what that looks like. Okay, spot on frequency. I'm using 146.52 to test, and that's what the scope says. That looks great. I don't see anything wrong with that. Freddie, this looks like a really great radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Was that not a shock or what? Spectral purity on a TYT radio. Not knocking TYT. Not saying that TYT is a bad brand. I'm not saying that. But Chinese radios, especially the ones of lower cost, have a reputation of not having spectral purity, throwing out spurious emissions. And that's something we don't want to do, and we're bound as ham radio operators not to promote, but try to fix, test, several other avenues, but definitely not condone or cause interference. Does that make sense? Nonetheless, I sent that out to Jim. He tested it, and he said it's the cleanest radio he's ever seen. Of course, you heard him. It was surprising to me, to say the very least. I'm going to continue to evaluate this radio. It has some possibilities. I don't know yet if I want to use it in a mobile environment or put a battery eliminator on it and a better antenna and set it up somewhere as a quasi crossband repeater. I have a 70 centimeter repeater in in Preston, Oklahoma. And it's 17 some odd miles from me, but there is a hill range between us. It's at a pretty good elevation. And I can usually kerchunk the repeater from my living room with a walkie, but you have to get your sweet spot to maintain that signal. So for a little while, I had a crossband repeater up, and I needed to bolster it to keep it as a long-term repeater because it needed proper cooling, and I needed to pick a better frequency for the 2-meter side. But nonetheless, when it was in operation, I could use a small, low-power walkie from my living room, transmit on 2-meter. It would convert it out to 70 centimeter and go up to Preston, and it's bi-directional. It would come back to me as well. And that made it worth every bit. Well, this little radio does the exact same thing. When you've got these two frequencies set right and you programmed it to be in crossband repeat mode, it's bidirectional. It comes both ways, which makes it super handy to get to a repeater far away if you've just got a walkie and this device. So I'll have some future videos coming up showing you how that works, but I'm just not sure what the permanent implications I've got for it, but it's going to be something because this little radio is a winner. Thank you, TYT, for such a wonderful radio, and thank you, Jim, at FEP Labs, WT1W, Whiskey Tango 1 Whiskey, for a great test, and I appreciate it. I owe you one, brother. All right, folks, this is Freddie Mac, wishing all the good signals to be yours, saying 73, and ham on, y'all.